Today, we are looking at the inflation in the US, its impact on the cost of living, gas prices, and the general well-being of average Americans. What will be the inflation cost per household? Can individuals already employed at pre-pandemic or post-pandemic wage weather the inflation cost without additional income or work hours? Most people are worried about the rising cost of food, gas, utilities, and other life essentials. The rise of costs can be directly attributed to inflation, supply chain disruption, Putin's invasion of Ukraine with grave impact on global energy and relative commodity prices. We shall focus on the US rising inflation number and the impact on personal finances. We shall analyze the inflation, what inflation means to savings, gas prices, rent, mortgage, and the cost of healthcare, and essentially the wage bill. We shall look at the expected additional cost of living to families in the US. What does it mean in real life? What is the projected price of gasoline per gallon? Welcome on board. Take a seat, grab a drink, and let's reason together. Listen to the end to get the benefit of this broadcast. We made some forward-looking projections for 2022 and how you can benefit from the rising inflation by playing it to your own advantage. Hello everyone and welcome to Living Finance. This platform presents a reason analysis in finance, the economy, crypto, stock market, electric vehicles, artificial intelligence, healthcare, and how policies in these sectors affect personal finances. Please subscribe, share, and turn on the notification button. As is customary to Living Finance, we try to educate through social engagement and reason dissemination. To better understand the topic, it is essential to understand the meaning of inflation. So what is inflation? According to the Federal Reserve, inflation is the increase in the price of goods and services over time. Inflation cannot be measured by an increase in the cost of one product or service, or even several products or services. Rather, inflation is a general increase in the overall price level of goods and services in the economy. So how does the Federal Reserve arrive at an inflation figure? The metrics are essential to understanding the concept of inflation and how inflation figure is determined. According to the Federal Reserve, policymakers evaluate changes in inflation by monitoring several different price indices. A price index measures changes in the price of a group of goods and services. The Federal Reserve considers several price indices because different indices track different products and services, and because indices are calculated differently, therefore, various indices can send diverse signals about inflation. To determine the inflation trend in the economy, the Federal Reserve employs a three-step methodology. For ease of understanding, we have listed these steps with references to critical components of the metrics used. They are as follows. Firstly, policymakers consider average inflation over a long period, from a few months to over a year, because inflation numbers may vary erratically from month to month. Secondly, since the Fed makes policies based on best forecast of inflation, they must ascertain if inflation will persist or if it is transitory. Policymakers must regularly conduct surveys of a bucket of items that make up a broad price index and decide whether a rise in inflation can be attributed to price changes. In the subcategories, let's call this subcategory a bucket of items. Lastly, the federal policymakers must consider various core inflation measures to help identify inflation trends. They exclude items with erratic price swings, like food and energy. Nonetheless, policymakers try to stabilize the prices of consumer goods, which food and energy are part of because they are an essential part of American household expenditure. Now listen, fact number one. According to official statistics, inflation in the US is at a 40-year high, estimated at 7.9%, with the Federal Reserve tightening monetary policy to stem inflation. Now that we have the foundational knowledge of inflation, let's delve into the substance of today's topic and how it affects American households. President Biden wants Americans to blame Putin for the high gasoline prices. The price of gasoline has risen since the invasion of Ukraine by Putin to a level not seen in the last years. However, there are increasing prices of other commodities too. The question is whether we can fully attribute the general inflation to Putin's invasion of Ukraine, or if we can attribute high gas prices to Putin. In contrast, inflation may reflect the broader aspect of the economy. Let us know what you think about this in the comment section below. Although before Putin invaded Ukraine, there were supply chain disruption issues resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic. Putin's war has compounded the already dislocated supply chain constraints. Every American will feel the pinch of price increases across life essential items. The cost of living will increase. Global energy and commodities prices may continue to rise due to Putin's war. Average Americans will pay more for gasoline and heating gas at home. They will pay more for groceries at the counter. President Biden believes that Americans will endure the economic and financial strain resulting from the economic war with Russia. Fact number 2. According to Bloomberg, since 2020, inflation has added $32 billion to U.S. online sales. Some questions come to mind. To what extent are Americans willing to take the rising inflation if measures are not in place to address at least one component, high energy prices? The period when average Americans who live paycheck to paycheck can endure the rising cost remains to be seen. Hopefully, it will not hurt the fortunes of the Democratic Party in the midterm elections. Some political analysts believe that it might cost the Democratic Party some seats in the legislature. Perhaps you should know that the United States is one of the largest oil producers and also the highest consumer. The U.S. can engage in strategic relationship it maintains with some oil-producing countries in the Middle East to increase the supply of crude to reduce the spot price, thereby reducing the cost at the pump. Some commentators believe that the U.S. should release oil from the strategic reserves to address domestic consumption, reducing gasoline prices at the pump and heating costs from utilities. One way they say the Biden administration can handle the hurt Americans feel at the gas pump. While some attribute the U.S. inflation to rising commodity prices backed by solid demand post-COVID-19, others believe the Biden administration relief spending fueled the inflation. They consider Putin's invasion of Ukraine a secondary factor to inflation. On whose side are you? Let us know what you think in the comment section below. Why does inflation and interest rate matter? The Fed targets a 2% inflation over a long period measured by some criteria, such as personal consumption. Inflation must remain low to maintain price stability and high employment in the economy. When there is stable inflation at 2%, families can make a long-term plan to save and invest. They can borrow to buy homes, take out car loans, and businesses can borrow to fund their enterprise. The economy benefits with people gainfully employed. Maximum employment is sustained in the economy when the interest rate and inflation rate are low. However, it is not desirable to have too low inflation because it weakens the economy and can have adverse economic shocks if not addressed. Nonetheless, a spiral rise in inflation can potentially dislocate the economy with the potential to cause a recession. The Fed works to keep inflation at a minimum of 2% and slightly above 2% during good times to maintain price stability. The Federal Reserve sets monetary policies that influence employment and inflation with tools that affect the cost of credit and its availability in the economy. One of the mechanisms used by the Federal Reserve is the Federal Reserve Funds Rate. Banks pay this rate to borrow from the federal funds market overnight. Any change in this rate affects the cost of loans to businesses and individuals. A rise in interest rates raises the rate to which the banks lend to businesses and households. A lower rate has a reverse effect. Fact number 3. According to Bloomberg, in 2022, inflation will add $27 billion. Now that you know the fundamentals, let's talk about the estimated cost of inflation for each family this year 2022 and the areas it will affect. As inflation spikes, the average American families will pay more for rent, housing, alcohol, fruits, food, and transportation in 2022. According to statistics, an average American family spent 35% on housing and utilities in 2020. Transportation and gasoline costs were 16%, including vehicle purchases, food, and related expenses were estimated to cost 12%. However, with the rising inflation, energy prices, food, rent, and insurance will increase in 2022. According to Moody's Analytics, An average U.S. household will spend $296 more per month in 2020 on necessities as inflation rages. This is additional $3,552 in a year. Models believe that inflation results from the disruption in supply chain caused by the pandemic, with Putin's invasion of Ukraine as a secondary factor. Consumers are now spending less on goods and services, with significant price increases, including rent, food, vehicles, household equipment, and furniture. Fact number 4. Retirees are worried about the rising inflation and how it will affect their ability to have a quality life. The price for new and old vehicles will remain high because of the chip industry disruption and the rising inflation. The price of groceries will continue to rise if inflation is not tamed because wages, transportation, and other related services will drive the price of goods and services, which costs will pass to consumers at the checkout counter. The price of beef and pork meat increased between 14 to 20%. The cost of citrus fruits increased by 6.8% in February, while gas increased by 6.7% in February. The price of gasoline at the pump price was at a new record high. A new record was set for gas prices in March of 2022, beating the one set 14 years ago in the US, when a gallon of gasoline sold at $14.14. The new record is $14.31. Fact number 5. An average American family will spend an additional $3,522 in 2022 due to the rising inflation. Remember to subscribe, like, share, and turn on the notification button. How will inflation affect healthcare? The rising costs will affect medical expenses, insurance, supplies, utilities, and employees' wages. Prescription medication and insurance premiums will rise if inflation is unabated and continues to spike. According to Consumer Price Index, healthcare costs rose in 2021, and physicians' costs rose by 4.3%, while the cost of hospital care increased by 3.3%. Fact number 6. There is no empirical evidence that Biden's administration pandemic relief caused inflation. On the contrary, perhaps it prevented recession. Now let's turn our attention to the impact of inflation on some U.S. cities. Which cities had the highest inflation figures? According to Wall Street Journal, inflation was hottest in Atlanta and mildest in San Francisco in 2021. The journal reported that consumer prices increased higher in large U.S. metropolitan cities, with the influx of new residents, while inflation was low in coastal cities with lower populations. The Atlanta Sandy Spring Roswell region witnessed inflation of about 9.8% in 12 months, with more than 2.5 million people. Tampa, Florida, Phoenix, and St. Louis saw an inflation of over 7%, higher than the national average in December 2021. Finally, let's talk about Russia and the World Trade Organization. The sanctions of the World Trade Organization will further inflation for some commodities produced in Russia if the organization goes ahead with sanction or ban trade with Russia. If the WTO imposes sanctions on Russia, it will further inflation of commodities that Russia provides to the marketplace. According to a report, the World Trade Organization discussed the possibility of revoking Russia's most favored nation status and decide whether to expel or suspend Russia from the World Trade Organization. Canada has taken a proactive decision to withdraw Russia's most favored nation status. As a result, imports from Russia will not enjoy the same tariff from other member states. Subscribe, turn on the notification button and share the link. Let us know in the comment section button some of the topics you want us to discuss. Thank you for listening. Remember, this is not an investment advice. Remember, the information contained in this broadcast is not investment advice. Please do not rely on it to make any financial or investment decision. Consult a licensed investment advisor before making an investment decision. Thank you.